It is of general knowledge that the type of data set that you work on as a data analyst makes you the special type of data analyst that you have. Take for example, if you are a data analyst and you work on more like financial data or finance data, then at some point in time you tend to become a financial analyst. And if you are working on a business data to maximize profits and minimize cost, in the long run we tend to see you as a business intelligence analyst, as some people may also have it, a business analyst. So it's no news, it's not something new that the type of data set that you work on determine the type of data analyst that you become in the long run. But now let's take a closer look. Now the type of variables that makes up your data set is going to determine how you are going to approach your data, or I can say how you are going to analyze your data set based on your aims and objective. Now, by data, we have several types of data depending on the angle you're coming from. So from the statistics standpoint, we have two types of data. We have the numerical, aka the quantitative data, and we have the categorical, aka the qualitative data. But I'm not going to be coming from that standpoint. I'm coming from the standpoint of the structured data and the unstructured data, and my attention will be focused mainly on the structured data. So basically, a data set is said to be structured if it consists of rows and columns, right? And a data set that has multiple rows and multiple columns is known as a panel data set. As far as you have more than two rows and you have several columns in your data set, then you have a panel data set. Now the rows are also known as the observations and the columns are also known as the variable. So whenever you have a panel data set, a structured data set, and you can see time among the variables. So let's assume, for example, you have a business data. You've collected variables of price, of quantity, of sales, of profit and income, and all of those details that is subjective and is related to your business or your sector. And this data set, these variables rather, were collected over a period of time, probably yearly, monthly, daily, weekly, hourly. As far as time is a factor, whenever you are collecting your data set, then such data that has time in quotes attached to it is what we call a time series data. So in simple terms, we have a time series data where we collect a variable or a piece of information over a period of time, over an interval, over a period of time. I think that's just what I can say. So you get the logic, right? So the question is, how do you analyze a time series data? And this is where this video comes inside. In today's video, I'll be talking about time series analysis, that is a branch of data analysis or statistics that focus on how we can analyze a time series data. Please note that the time series analysis is quite mathematical, but thanks to softwares and technology in the long run, we don't have to like do the mathematics by hand. All you have to do is to just write a code and press a button, and before you know, the analysis is out for you. So today I won't go to the how to use Excel, how to use Python, how to use SPSS or R to perform time series analysis forecasting. I'm not like talking about that. Today's video is going to be like an overview of time series data, time series analysis and forecasting, and probably subsequent videos we are going to be talking about how to properly forecast a time series data. So without further ado, let's get into the video properly. Now, when you first get your data set, the first thing you usually do after cleaning your data set is to summarize the data set, is to explore the data set to see if there is a recognizable pattern attached to it. And we do that by using the concept of mean, median, mode, data visualization. We use kurtosis and skewness. Now, that does not really apply to a time series data because a time series data has time attached to it. So you cannot tell me the average time, you cannot tell me the terms, like the sum of time, although you can get the average of the variable you are working with over the period of time. So you can say, oh, I have time, or I have month, and I have quantity, so the average quantity over time is this. But that is not really a useful piece of information to us at the moment. By getting the average, by getting the mean, median, mode, or by getting the kurtosis, you are just doing it for the variable itself. This has not been done with respect to the time factor that we have. So that now reminds me, so that means how do you now summarize or describe a time series data. Before I talk about the 4 components that we use to summarize or explain or characterize a time series data, the good news is that you can actually visualize a time series data. And in fact, when it comes to visualizing a time series data, we actually use what we call the line chart. So the line chart is like the best when it comes to visualizing a time series data. So if you're actually visualizing just a single variable with time, then you use the simple line chart. If you are visualizing more than 2 variables, or more than 1 variable rather, over time, like 2 or more, then you'll be using the multiple line chart. We also have the compound line chart. In fact, I have a video on the concept of line chart and how to construct a line chart with Microsoft Excel. I'll be linking that video in the top right corner, either here or here. You can just check that out after watching this video. Now that you know that you can actually visualize a time series data with the line chart and read and understand some basic points and patterns, so we basically have 4 components that defines or that summarize or that characterize a time series data. We have what we call the trend component. We have the second one, which is the seasonal component or the seasonal variation. The third one is what we call the cyclic component or the cyclic variations, and the last one but not the least is the irregular variations or the irregular movement. So let's talk about each of this as they come. So let's start with the trend components or the trend variations. So basically, whenever you plot a line chart rather for a time series data, okay, you can be able to see whether the chart over time or the variable you are working with over time has an upward slope or a downward slope or a stable sort of like slope, if I can use that word. So basically, let's say you actually plot a line chart for your variable, and you realize that a line, like a straight line, is drawn over the chart and it's having like an upward slope, then it simply means that there is an upward trend in this variable you are working with. Let's take, for example, you sell cakes and you realize that around June, July, August, September, there's like this upward slope of sales within that period. Like you notice that like there's an increase in sales within the period of June down to October, then that means that's an upward slope. And you also notice a downward or a reduction in sales from October, November down to December, like that's a downward slope. But you can also notice like a stable sort of like relationship between some specific months or days, meaning like it's not increasing, it is neither decreasing, it's just like this form of like a stable line. Then that is also a stable slope, like I said, if I can use the word. So the trend is basically the movement of the variable over a period of time. Now the next one is what we'll call the seasonal components or the seasonal variations, and this is a sort of variations that you experience based on seasons, based on predetermined scenarios, based on things that you cannot control but it has to happen. For example, from September, October, November, and down to December, we realize that there's always this increase in sales of Christmas goods, gifts, and everything that has to do with the holiday. So that means in this case, it happens every Christmas season, and around January, February, March, the whole thing dies down. So in this case, the sales of Christmas goods or gifts or holiday stuffs, it has this upward slope, you understand, if I can use the word. So basically it's based on the season. Also, you can also realize that during the summer, where everywhere is hot, the number of people that visit the beach is going to be like what's increasing. So in this scenario, there is a seasonal variation based on the fact that there is summer. Also, during the hot time, the number of ACs that will be sold and the number of cooling devices will obviously increase, because people want to get cold, or not really cold, but feel a bit cooler compared to the hot weather. So stuff like that. And when it comes to raining season, the number of umbrellas being sold is going to skyrocket, and raincoat also. So that means whenever you have variations in your time series data based on a season or based on scenarios or based on things that you can't control, this can be geopolitical, it can be natural. Most times it's usually natural things that you can't control, but sometimes the geography of the geopolitical factor can also come into place. Now the next one is the cyclic variations or the cyclic components. For us to understand the cyclic variations, we have to understand what a cycle is. So a cycle is just like a complete 360-degree. I think that's the word. So let's use a business situation as an example. So a business cycle is just a whole year, right? Meaning from January down to December. So that means like 12 months, 360, like from beginning down to the end. Now for any business, there is usually the boom period and the doom period. So the boom period is like the loud period where the business is making money, everything is working fine, there is a lot of influx of cash and all of those stuff. And the doom period is where the business is a bit down and there is not much sales. And so companies experience doom and boom several times in a year. So it goes like boom, then doom, boom, then doom. You understand? So these variations over the time is what we call a cyclic variation. So probably in our first year we have like 2 dooms and 2 booms. So it will be one doom, then another one like this. So that's like this. Then in the next year we have another one. It goes like this. So that's a cyclic variation. It has this like a sine or a cosine wave sort of. So that's just the cyclic variation. Okay, now the last one is what we call the irregularities variations, or the irregular movements rather. And this is scenarios that you can't just control. You didn't expect it to happen, it just happened, and boom, it affects the whole thing. Take for example 2019 COVID. Now businesses were going fine, everything was working well, there was no problem, and all of a sudden boom, the COVID showed up and it scattered almost everything. Like people were in a different level entirely, in a different group. Now that is irregularities. You can't predict it, you just didn't expect it and it showed up. So that is not about that. Now we've known what we use to describe and summarize a time series data, but time series is not only used for summarization, meaning that you don't only summarize a time series data. In fact, one of the main reasons why we have time series data and time series analysis is because we want to forecast. We want to use the previous data that we have to make predictions about the future, and that is where time series analysis forecasting comes inside. You see, in simple terms, forecasting is more or less like a predictive model, meaning you have something right now and you want to use what you have right now to predict the value of the next few years. Okay, so a business owner might be having sales data right now and is interested in, oh, you know what, if I have this sales for the last 5 years, how will I be able to use the past sales of the last 5 years to predict the future sales of the next 10 years? Now that is forecasting, that is time series analysis. Okay, so when it comes to forecasting, we have several models that can actually help us. We have several techniques rather. Okay, now like I said earlier on, time series analysis or time series forecasting is a bit mathematical and complex. So but thanks to the likes of R, Python, they have these models built inside them. So you just have to understand the basics and you get to perform your time series analysis. Please note that the time series model that you're going to be using to solve a problem is dependent on 2 things. Number one is the type of time series data that you have, and secondly is your aims and objective, this problem you have at hand, and the type of solution that you want to prescribe. So there are several models when it comes to time series, but I'll be talking about the 4 popular ones, and that is the moving average, the exponential smoothing, we have the autoregressive model, and we have the TBTAT model. So each of these models kind of have like sub models, okay, and like I said, they are being used based on the scenario at hand, the condition at hand, the problem at hand, and then the type of data sets that you have. Okay, so let's start with the moving average. So basically, to be honest with you, the moving average is more of a smoothing technique, because it is basically used to remove noise from data sets so that you can be able to see the pattern or the trend clearly. So the main aim of a moving average is to smoothen your data set, is to make your data set clearer for you to see the trend and pattern, but it can also be used to predict some future values from the past values. Okay, and the moving average does this smoothing rather by using the average values of the variables that you're actually working with respect to time. Now, one thing we need to know is that the moving average can only work for a single variable. That is, when it comes to univariate analysis of time series data, meaning you're just working with time and let's just say price. So a price, right, is a single variable and we have time. So you can use a moving average to smoothen how price changes over time, and then predict future price from the previous price. So the next is what we'll call the exponential smoothing, and this is like a better version of the moving average, in the sense that unlike the moving average that uses average to like smoothing your data set, the exponential smoothing, like you guessed, use the exponential function to smoothing your data set, and it is more reliable than the moving average. Okay, the exponential smoothing can also be used to predict future value from past values, but it can only work for short future predictions and not long-term predictions. So that means that if you just want to predict for like 6 months or maximum 1 year, you can use the exponential smoothing, but you can never use your exponential smoothing for like 3, 4, 5 years predictions. Now that's because the decay of the exponentials, okay, that you're using to like smooth your data set will bring in some effects into your data set, so you are not advised to use exponential smoothing for predicting long-term values. Okay, now under exponential smoothing we have like 3 types of exponential smoothing. We have the single exponential smoothing, we have the double exponential smoothing, and we have the triple exponential smoothing. So it depends on the condition you have at hand and how you want to approach your data set. You will choose the one that suits you. Okay, we also have the autoregressive model, and as the name implies, it simply means that it comes from regression, and regression is basically used to predict future values from present values. So autoregressive model has nothing to do with smoothing your data set or trying to see the pattern. Its own is just that you have a time series data. I'm going to be using the past data to predict the future data. Before you can be able to use the autoregressive model, you have to make sure that there's a correlation between the past value that you have like previously and the future values that you're actually going to be predicting. Now this is what we'll call autocorrelation, that is a high relationship between the predicted value and the past value. Now for autoregressive model, the autocorrelation value or the correlation value that is accepted is 0.5 and more. So that means if there is a very high autocorrelation in your time series data between the past and the future values, then definitely using an autoregressive model to predict your future values is going to be giving you very high accurate sort of predictions. Okay, now the autoregressive model is not all about smoothing data, and that is why you have to combine it with other smoothing models. So we have several types of the autoregressive model. We have the likes of ARMA, and that is autoregressive moving average. So that means this is a combination of autoregression and the moving average. We also have the ARIMA, and that is basically autoregressive integrated moving average. We also have what we call the SARIMA. So the SARIMA is seasonal autoregressive integrated moving average, and this is where you want to perform your forecast, but you want to not only smoothing out the noise to see the trends, but you also want to consider the seasonality in your data set. Now the last model that I would be talking about is the TBATS, which is an acronym for trigonometric box and Cox transform, ARMA error, trends, and seasonal components. I think that's it. So that is such a mouthful model, but basically it's a model that combines a whole lot of things together. It's combining trigonometry rather, just because it wants to use the Fourier series. It also has ARMA inside, it has the trend, it has the seasonal components, and all of those stuff. So the honest truth is that this is a type of exponential smoothing. It uses exponential smoothing as its basic technique, but at the same time it's bringing in all other type of parameters to make the model a better one. So basically this model is best used whenever we have multiple seasonality in our data set. Okay, and each seasonality is modeled by a trigonometric function based on the Fourier series. That sounds like a complex stuff, but thanks to softwares Python, R, and the rest softwares, they can be able to just help us perform all of this complex mathematics and without us looking back. So this is just the basis of time series analysis and time series forecasting. I hope I've been able to summarize it and make you enjoy the basics of time series analysis. So if you enjoyed this video and you learned something new from this video, please don't hesitate to give this video a thumbs up and also subscribe to this YouTube channel. Do you have some questions for me, or you feel like I missed something? Please don't hesitate to go down to the comment section and drop your questions or comments. I would be willing willing and be ready to attend to all of them. Thanks for making it to the end of this video, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.